You really, up until about mid-April, when a Wall Street Journal editorial came out, you were on fire about the protection of American workers, about looking at immigration as a major issue, about focusing on bread and butter issues that go to the heart of kind of this angst that the American blue-collar workers and middle class in this country have. Why do you think that message is not getting out? And what did that Wall Street Journal editorial that criticized you for listening to Senator Sessions, do you think that rattled you a bit, or it got you off your game, or what's going on here?
Oh, it didn't rattle me. I mean, as you know, we've not been intimidated by just about anything. Anything politically, that's for sure. I mean, 100,000 protesters, death threats, recalls, pushback. No, I mean, I think right now, nationally in the media, it's a matter of, we were at that point, and will be, I think, going forward, but at that point, we were kind of viewed as the outsiders. And we definitely are. We're about as anti-Washington as you can get, in the sense that I took on all the Washington power structure. It was the liberals, not just the unions, but the liberals in Washington and everything else in that group we took on, and ultimately prevailed, not just in 3 elections in 4 years, but in terms of our policy, not just union policy, but you name it, every major conservative reform we've done in the country. I think what you've seen, though, right now in the polls are 3 candidates who've never held elected office before, and that's largely reflective of the frustration that many Republican primary voters have with Republican leadership in the House and the Senate, feeling like they're not listening to the base. And so I think the normal reaction, at least for now, is to say we're going to gravitate to people who are as far away from politics as possible, and therefore that means people who've never held office are right at the top of the list. I just believe in the end, I'm in Iowa today, I believe in the end, when people sit down and look and say, that's great, but do I want someone who sounds good and has never been in politics but may not be tested?
Oh, okay, I agree. You're going to say, I have, whether it's a Milwaukee County executive or governor of Wisconsin, I've told people I'm going to do a handful of things, and it come hell or high water, those things get done. Let me ask you a question.
I mean, that's just the bottom line. We've done it before, and I think in the end people want that. You may not hire me to build condos for you in New York City. You may not hire me to be a neurosurgeon or the CEO of HP, but I think if you were sitting back looking to hire someone and said, I want somebody who can take on Washington and win, we've got the best track record. But do it.
Let me unpack this for a second. Let's leave Carly Fiorina, her 11 or 14% aside. If you combine Trump and Carson, those are a lot of, I would posit, Walker voters. That's 40%, or in some cases 48% of where the math adds up. What are the 2 or 3 policy positions and things that like you did when you were executive and ran for executive of Milwaukee County, and then when you ran for governor? What are the 2 or 3 basic things that people would say, hey, this is what Governor Walker says he's going to do. This is important enough for me to pay attention. What is it? What's the centerpiece of the domestic agenda of a President Walker administration?
Day one, we sent up a bill to repeal Obamacare. We call it the Day One Patient Freedom Plan. We don't just send it up. We actually got a plan to repeal Obamacare and put patients and families back in charge of their health care decisions. But here's the key that makes it different than anything else anyone said up until now. On day one, I signed an order that requires the Congress themselves, their families, and their staff to live under the same rules as everyone else out there. That's exactly the kind of lighting a fire under their tail end to get them to go on repealing Obamacare. And I think that's central to the frustration that voters have. We were told as Republicans, if you have a Republican majority in the United States Senate to join with the House, then once they get that, they'll take a vote to repeal Obamacare. Well, heck, it's after Labor Day. There's been no vote.
Correct me if I'm wrong. Correct me if I'm wrong. In the 3-hour debate the other night, were you the only guy? Obamacare. Were you the only guy that it crossed the lips of? Was you? I didn't take notes of everything, but the only time I heard Obamacare, I thought was coming from you.
That's exactly right. And I pointed out. Well, I tried to point out in the debate that's really the core. That's what people are frustrated about. That's what I'm committed to doing. Instead of spending time beating up on the other Republican candidates or having them beat up on us, we've spent our time in this campaign talking about Hillary Clinton and what's wrong with the Barack Obama administration and what we would do starting on day one to fix that. day one, top of the list, number one on our list of objectives, get rid of Obamacare once and for all, not just because it's bad policy, but because it's bad for the American economy. You want the American economy to grow? Repeal Obamacare, put patients and families back in charge, which in turn will change the marketplace and drive premiums down, rein in out-of-control regulations at the federal level, put in place in all of the above energy policy, which begins with things like approving the Keystone Pipeline and lifting the crude oil export ban, make sure people have the education and skills they need to succeed, reform things like labor law in this country so that you put the American taxpayer and worker back in charge, not the big government union bosses, and reform the tax code and lower the tax burden in this country. If we do those things, and we have an legal immigration policy that gives priority to American working families and their wages, we will have a better economy if we all do all those things. And we need more than just a Republican in the White House. We need a reformer who's actually committed to doing those things once they take office. It's not enough to have a Republican. You got to have somebody who's actually going to get it done.
You know, Senator Rubio has been working. I think we've had some articles about some Disney workers that have been let go and had to train the foreign workers that replaced them. There's all this controversy about HB1 visas. I believe Senator Rubio has actually been working with the CEO of Disney, Bob Iger, on working on an expansion of HB1 visas. If in a President Walker administration, do you veto that bill?
Oh, we're going to absolutely give priority to American working families and their wages. In whatever we do, not just on immigration, but on trade and everything else, we should be focused on saying what is the impact on American working families and their wages. Not just what's the benefit of American corporations, but what does it mean to American workers and their families and their wages in this country. And I think that's something that's been missing, whether it's on immigration or trade, a whole bunch of other issues. To me, I'm all for free trade, but have it on a level playing field so American workers can compete with anyone in the world.
Whether it's TPP, TPA, all these trade deals are not bilateral. What you would do is make sure that everything sees the light of day, everything's discussed, everything's debated, that not just K Street and the Chamber of Commerce, but also you would make sure that the American workers at least have, the workers in this country would have a seat at the table to make sure that all of these trade bills, all of this immigration policy was fully vetted, to make sure what the impact was on wages and what the impact was on workers' lives.
Yeah, level the playing field so that American workers can compete with anyone, and then we give priority when it comes to our policies towards the impact on American workers and their families. I mean, that's what this should be about. In the same way I apply it to EPA and other regulations, all these things should be viewed through the scope of saying what is the impact on American working families, because this federal government on so many different levels has lost sight of the fact that what we should be doing is making it easier for families to get by, making it easier for people to live the American dream. The American dream isn't the size of your business or the size of your house, even the size of your car. It ultimately is, how do I pass on a life to my children that's a little bit better than the one I inherited from my parents? And that means we need to give priority. You talk about income inequality. It's not about having the government dictate that. It's about helping the American workers succeed, and they need a champion in the White House.
Would you make sure, one of the problems we have with immigration right now is that even legal immigration, I think there's a report, and we had it up on Breitbart about a week ago, over 50% of legal immigrants, I think, are in some form of social welfare. You see the issue that's taking place in Europe right now. In your administration, would you, and by the way, that's actually against the law. Would you actually make sure the laws were enforced, the laws on the books were enforced about not just illegal, but legal immigrants, about their access to welfare and to other social benefits?
Well, to me, I think there needs to be massive welfare reform overall, not only when it comes to immigration. You're right, there are programs that people are supposed to say will allow someone to sponsor something coming in as long as they're not going to be dependent on the taxpayers. And if they are, I should say, then that's a violation of the terms of that agreement. But in the larger context, I think I've done it when I stand on odds at the federal government. I think any able-bodied adult, any adult who's able to work, should be required to find work. We require people before they get public assistance to go through job training and to go through a filter to make sure they're free of drugs. I think in the larger context, when we talk about immigration and say secure the border, enforce the laws, part of enforcing the laws means not only a need-verify system that works, It means making sure that people are eligible for public assistance and they're following the laws in that regard. That's not happening across the country, and it needs to.
You've seen the problems with the grassroots and the base, people that are naturally drawn to the Scott Walker message and to the Governor Walker persona. You've seen their frustration with leadership on Capitol Hill, whether it's Mitch McConnell in the Senate or John Boehner in the House. And you've seen this vacate the chair thing that's going up and may come to a climax over Planned Parenthood or others. Are you prepared to tell the base that as president from the executive branch, you will take on the type of powers that be in the Republican establishment, the corporate interest, take those on to fight for them?
Yeah, I mean, I have, and this is one of those where you get a lot of great people in this race, but what makes us different is you don't have to wonder if we do fight these battles. We have fought these battles. When I came in with the reforms we took on with the unions, I had a vast new members of the Assembly, the lower house, 27 new members. Man, they were ready to go. When I came and talked to their caucus, it was like a moment out of the movie Braveheart. They were ready to go in the battle, cheering me on, excited. I went to the state Senate, where there were some great champions like State Senator Scott Fitzgerald, the leader, but there were some of the senators there. It was like I told them their puppy had just died. They had no interest in this. They didn't want to be pushed into this. They were reluctant at best. And I had to push back and say, no, this is what we're going to do. We told the voters we were going to push big, bold reforms. We have to do that. It's put up or shut up time, and that's exactly what we did. And I've shown we could do it at the state level. There's no doubt we can do it in Washington, and that's what the voters demanded. It's put up or shut up time in Washington.
One last question. I know you're busy. We'll let you go. But as Commander-in-Chief, President Walker, this debacle that's going on in North Africa and the Middle East today, the Christian persecution, the implosion of several countries over there, and this, whether it's refugees or mass migration up to Europe right now, the president is now signaling that there could be quite substantial access to immigration or refugees from the Middle East. In a President Walker's administration, as you prosecute the war against ISIS and look at kind of geopolitically, what would be the 2 or 3 things you would focus on in this entire European situation, since it's coming from the Middle East and North Africa?
Well, refugees in general, I'd point out that I've said recently that I think we need to stop bringing in more refugees, not because we haven't been good-hearted. We have. People forget that America in the past year permanently settled some 70,000 refugees, of which several thousand were from Syria. On top of that, we spent something like $4 billion, that's with a B, $4 billion on helping the Syrian refugee crisis. So America has stepped up. What I take issue with, is this administration is not addressing the core problem. They're addressing the symptoms. And the problem is Assad, and the problem is Syria. We need to take action on both. We had a president with Assad who drew a line in the sand and allowed it to be crossed. We need to push for regime change there. I mean, they spent something like $500 million on a program that Secretary Carter claimed it only trained about 60. Now we have General Austin say the other day that it was something like 4 or 5 or less.
If we got 4 guys. We got 4 guys on our side for $500 million.
That's insane. That makes no sense whatsoever. And so if we're going to empower people from within to be rebels to take on that government, we've got to do that. We've got to have a no-fly zone. We've got to have a series of other things that provide the cover to push back on Assad and push regime change. And on the ISIS side, in Iraq in particular, we've got to lift the political restrictions on the military personnel already there so they can empower and support the Kurd and the Sunni tribal allies who will take out ISIS in the territory in Iraq that they've taken, and do so in a way that doesn't allow them to creep back into Syria. That's the difference between leadership and the failure to lead that we see under the Obama quit doctrine.
I got to tell you, our founder and spiritual leader, Andrew Breitbart, spent a lot of time in Wisconsin, shoulder to shoulder with you in those dark days when they recalled you. And I got to tell you, he said from day one, this guy's a fighter. So, Governor Walker, we look forward to seeing the fighting spirit of Governor Scott Walker in the campaign trail in the days and weeks ahead.
Well, thank you. 4 years ago, Time Magazine, I was so low in the polls, Time Magazine called me Dead Man Walker. We came back and won that recall election with more votes in June of 2012 than we did in the original election. Why? Because we stayed true to who we were, and we showed the public, the voters in particular, that our conservative reforms worked, and we won those elections. We can do it again. Governor Walker, thank you so much for taking time away from your busy schedule in Iowa. Good luck, sir. Thank you.